Hello, people. Welcome to our podcast today. This is EJ, the brand.
And Coach Aaron, the source.
Aaron, today, man, we got a great subject. I love it because we have a lot of athletes returning to play. And that's the topic that we're going to talk about today, my man.
Yeah, I like this because it's really relevant and it's really timely, especially in my instance where I'm training athletes. I have been training athletes and they've gone out and I'm getting some reports back and finding out how they're doing. Because I like to keep tabs on the athletes, see how the training is transitioning, that sort of thing. And I'm hearing reports of athletes getting hurt, not just necessarily athletes I'm working with, but teammates and so forth. Okay. I'm talking to the parents and they're talking about how, some of the other kids are having, ankle sprains and knee sprains and hamstring strains and all of these sorts of things. And so it got me to thinking, really what's behind all of this. And there's a lot of factors. And so I wrote an article on it on the GameSpeed.net website. You guys can check that out, Return to Play. But
good article too, by the way. Good article. I loved it.
But, what I noticed is, and actually kind of just thinking about this, there's a few different factors. One, I think we need to realize most athletes haven't really played competitively in about a year. I mean, COVID's been around for 14 months. Well, thereabouts or so. And so most kids have actually been competitively inactive for about a year. And even though some athletes have been training, they haven't been playing at game speed. They haven't been playing full throttle, all out.
Right.
And I think that's complicated a lot of or actually been the problem for a lot of these athletes, even for those who have been training. I mean, obviously the ones who haven't been training, well, there's a lot more issues. They're out of shape and everything else. But for those who have been training, I think one of the biggest things is just the layoff. The body is rusty, timing might be off, and so that can lead to some injuries. And I think there's a way that athletes should move into this opening now, and that's some of the things that I think we need to discuss.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I think the coaches need to be aware of it too, Aaron, because coaches want to push their athletes. We got to play. They're excited.
Yes.
Parents are excited. Everyone's excited. And I'm like, pump the brakes a little bit. Being an ex-major league player and understanding the process of getting ready during spring training, that's why spring training is 6 weeks. Gives you 6 weeks to get ready for opening day. And even at opening day, you still, it's not until like the middle of April where you or the end of April where I'm like, okay, I'm settled in more. So you're talking 7 to 8 weeks of an adjustment period to get your body back to the adrenaline flowing, the referees or umpires or officials talking, getting your game shoes. That's what I call it, Aaron. Game shoes, whether it's the game basketball shoes or it's the new spikes in track, or it's the ice skates or the baseball spikes or football cleats, soccer cleats. You're getting that stuff back. You're getting your game stuff back on.
Right.
And that's a big deal. And your adrenaline and all the chemicals in your body, the juices that are flowing again, that's a different feel.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think as coaches and as players and as parents, you need to settle in your athletes. You have very good athletes on your team. You just can't all of a sudden say you're playing 7 innings or you're playing you're playing the whole football game, or you're going to run this many meets this fast. You got to build up and take that process step by step, and maybe have a plan of attack of how you're going to re-enter game situations ready to go full speed, as you say, game speed.
And that's what I was talking about when I mentioned ramp up. And it's funny you mentioned the 6 weeks, and that's basically what I usually prescribe. And in the 6 weeks, again, when we're talking about ramping up, we're talking about volume, we're talking about intensity. So, you may only throw so many pitches. You may only have, so many at bats. You may only run so many sprints or so many races. Because most of the injuries that occur are these soft tissue injuries and these repetitive stress injuries. And I think those injuries aren't necessarily due to the volume right away, but maybe the intensity right away.
Right.
It's a combination of the two, where you're trying to throw, you might throw 40 pitches, but if you're trying to throw them all out, then that becomes an issue. And I think managing some kind of ramp up plan needs to be in place, and that can be done inside your training. It can be done inside your practices, and also inside your games. So you might limit yourself to game activity, time being played, innings being played. Again, when we're track and field athletes, the number of races that you're going to run in a meet, and allow the body to kind of ease into this situation.
That's a great point. And I tell coaches this, Aaron, your best players need to, you just can't put them out there. And I see this a lot. Coaches will sit their best players, parents get upset about it. And I'm like, hey, pump your brakes on that, because regardless, those athletes need to take care of their bodies, and they slowly need to, get ready, or get their bodies in that feeling of that sensation of playing the game. So whether you're a coach, parent, whatever, or a very good athlete, or, whatever your spectrum is, understand it's a process. And understand your 6 week therapy right there to get their body ready is great. And I think these soft tissue injuries happen initially because we force our athletes to go out there and start competing at a high level. High level play happens when repetition and the body is ready to do it.
Right.
If it's not ready to do it, we can't get to high level, Aaron. You know? And I think that's important in terms of ramping our athletes back up during this reopening phase of athletic events for youth and college and professional sports.
Right. And another word I'd like to use, and I think parents should keep in mind, is think of acclimation, because basically that's what we're doing. We're trying to acclimate the body to the activity. And so, we're doing that by exposing the athletes in smaller increments, in shorter time frames, to the desired activities that we want. So we're maybe in practice, you're gonna only do a certain percentage of your reps full speed. But over the course of time, the body gets acclimated to doing it at that point, at that speed or at that intensity. So, maybe think of it in terms of acclimation and putting things together slowly so that the athlete can respond correctly. The other thing that I'd like athletes to think about is the fatigue factor. There's a different level of fatigue when you're playing all out than just when you're practicing. We don't all just practice all out all the time. Practices are usually done at sub-maximal intensities. So you want to understand that, hey, if I do X amount of reps all out, there's going to be a certain amount of fatigue, which then kind of invites errors and mistakes, and that's when injuries can occur also. So I think dedicating some of your reps to full speed in a practice over the course of time, maybe over the course of this 6 weeks,
Right.
will build up that endurance of playing at game speed.
I like that a lot because when athletes are starting out as they are now, maybe that athlete is dribbling down the court full speed, 5 reps. Okay, during the first week of practice, they're just doing that every day. Next week, I might do 8 full speed or whatever.
Right.
I love the way you said that. And, athletes and parents understand that when you're practicing and you're returning to play, that's important that you do have those game reps in practice to build up and ramp up that intensity so you're ready to go in the game. It's well said right there, Aaron.
Last point I want to make is, and this is probably a big pet peeve of mine, is I tend to see some athletes, especially, and I usually will say this at the beginning of every season. Kids will train and they'll go off to their tryouts, and inevitably there's always a percentage of athletes who get hurt because of other athletes.
Oh, yes, gotcha.
And I really want athletes to understand that they've got to be aware of those athletes that they're practicing, competing against, that are around them, especially when you're talking about sports that, are like basketball, football, soccer, where there's collisions and physical contact.
Right.
Because the athletes you might be playing against may not be well prepared, which is going to make them more dangerous to you.
Right.
And I hear things about, this guy, he stepped on my ankle, or this guy landed on me wrong. We went up and jumped up for a ball, or we were all of these sorts of things happen because of other athletes' poor preparation, which results in poor play, which results in a higher risk of them not only injuring themselves, but also injuring you. So I think athletes need to understand, they need to sit back and say, hey, okay, Joey over there is kind of stumbling around here. On this next drill, we've got to go at it. I've got to be careful because he's not really ready to do this.
That's going to lead us to one of our podcasts in the future, how to get your team ready for competition.
Yes.
Everybody, not just 1 or 2 guys, but everybody. But man, that's true. I mean, those injuries are happening with us. Some guys are in better shape than other guys, and sometimes they're just not at that same level of being prepared at this stage of getting ready to play in these games. And you see stuff happen. I had a guy turn his ankle yesterday because the guy was just out of position, wasn't really there mentally or physically, and one of our better players turned his ankle, and I was like, okay. Now I had to take that player and put him aside, the player that hurt his ankle, so we wouldn't do any further damage. So it makes sense, Aaron. It's a good way to kind of wrap up what we've been talking about getting those guys ready. Okay, well, people, hey, thanks for tuning in, and we're gonna check you out next week. This is The Brand, Coach EJ.
And Coach Aaron Thigpen, The Source. See you.